Good evening, actually. I should say good morning. It's 12 o'clock in India now, and I believe you've driven about 650 miles today from Switzerland to Brittany, where you are currently. And it's 12 o'clock in India right now, and probably about 8:30 or 9:30, 8:30 in Brittany. How was your drive, and how are you feeling?
I'm feeling perfectly fine. Thank you so much for having me. It was a long day. I drove about 10 hours from Geneva to Brittany on the Atlantic coast where I live. And I was very anxious to get here on time in my house to be able to talk to you for this great opportunity of your convention.
Thank you very much. It's the Kids Animation and More Summit, which is being organized by Animation Express, which is India's leading animation provider and news and information provider. So really appreciate your coming here because you're a veteran of the animation industry. And so you worked with one of the leading broadcasters, and and you've also now you're running one of the leading studios in Europe with offices and with branches and offices in almost in several countries. So what's your views on the animation industry today, and how has it dovetailed with what you had planned for when you envisioned setting up Cyber Group?
Well, I think you're always surprised by what's going to happen. You plan for things, but it's always different. Its business plans are made for not being observed, actually. And I've entered the animation business a long time ago in 1988. I was coming from the music industry, and you rightfully said, I started working with Disney, and I set up most of the Disney channels in Europe, and also Walt Disney Animation Europe, which was a big studio that co-produced Lion King and Tarzan and Hunchback at the time, and Winnie the Pooh. And then, setting up the studio in 2005, I had no idea it would take us so far. I think that the market has accelerated. The passion for the industry has taken over millions of people across the globe. It's due to the fact that when the first big feature films appeared in the 1990 decade, people grew up with the movies, and then they got children. And then what happened was the technology, and the technology has beaten everyone. Nobody could expect digital CG, real-time animation, streamers, and the market and the environment has changed so much that animation has become a key branch of the entertainment industry. And I think it has accelerated in the 2010-2020 decade, and it's a great opportunity for creators, for animators, for all the technicians at work. And it's also through bridges across continents and across the countries, and that I'm very pleased to be part of it.
Yeah, so how different was your vision and compared to what you've achieved today?
Well, we never thought that we would be able to create series or movies that would appeal to the world at large, from Australia to India to China, Eastern Europe. And this, I think, happened because of the cable industry that came up, the channels that were created. So to me, that's a big change. When we released our first big hit, Zoo, which is a preschool series that was based, that we actually created in Europe with Disney, and that was in between 2011 2013. And I remember that at one day in Christmas, I think it was around 2015, it was seen, the day of Christmas, one episode was seen by 130 million children in 134 countries. It's been seen in India, in the United States, in Australia, all over Europe, in Asia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Russia, everywhere. And to me, that's a big surprise. That was a big surprise. Suddenly, the world was at our door. And I think that's what people have to realize, that animation is a medium which, more than anything else, transcends cultures and can be a source of joy for kids and families across the world. And that also gives a huge responsibility for the creators, because you talk to children, and when you create a series which is being seen by 100 million of kids, then you have a responsibility. You know, when you're an adult and you look at the live action series or a fiction movie, okay, you have your own education, you can make your own judgment. When you're a kid, you take that for face value. And to me, this is what actually I also learned at Disney when I was there for about 12 years in the 20th century, I would say, not in the 21st century. It carries a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely.
And today more than ever, actually.
Absolutely. So, what are the major trends we are seeing in animation production globally, creative-wise? Types of animation. Are we seeing more CG? Are we seeing 2D? And as well as demographic-wise, are we seeing more adult animation coming in? Are we seeing more preschool coming in? And are we seeing more 6 to 11 years animation coming in?
That is a very good question. I think today the market has opened for creators of all genres due to the fact that you can produce animation for about anyone. You can produce animation for kids, for adults, for teens, for preteens, for kids, for everyone. That is due to the fact that in the past there were only linear broadcasters, as you know, big linear broadcasters, whether were public or private. Then cable channels came, and then the streamers came, and then between that multiple cable channels, and then multiple streamers, and of course everyone is trying to get to a fraction of the public, either to get subscriptions or to get the audience. So today, I would say that you can create animation for everyone. In the past, in the 20th century, again, I like that comparison. You could talk about adult animation only in the US, on Comedy Central, on Fox. But today, you can create adult animation if it's played on streamers for around the world. So same thing happened with teen and preteen animation. New genres are appearing, like Japan created this notion of manga, which is a huge genre, publishing genre, that became a huge animation genre, and that is now going across the world. So in fact, the market, if you want to talk about market, has exploded in multiple ways. In terms of target age, in terms of styles, in the past you would say, okay, let's do comedy or let's do action, but you can do adventure, you can do comedy, you can do action, you can do drama, you can do horror, you can do lots of things that you find in live action. So in terms of content, the content has massively evolved. In terms of technology, it's the same. If you look at the animation in the 80s, it was 2D. And then CG came. I remember when I was asked, when I was working at Disney, to distribute Toy Story, the first Toy Story movie. We had never seen a CG picture. We could not understand what it was. Not that we did not like it. Of course we liked it, but we had no idea how this thing was done. And that was mid-90s. Then when we launched Cyber Group Studios, and we launched Cyber Group Studios with, in terms of like philosophy of creating, with 3 things. Of course, like I learned from Roy Disney, script, story. That's the first thing. The second thing, the best possible image and the best possible music, or whatever, make a combination of the 3. And we started with preschool in CG. And that was in 2005. And everyone was telling us, preschool in CG doesn't make any sense. Preschool has to be 2D. When you look back 17 years later, you're just laughing. So 2D came, CG came, digital 2D came. So today we've been commissioned, and we are producing for Spellbound Entertainment, The Walking Dead in real-time animation. Real-time animation, working with Unreal, working with CG, working with actors. And real-time animation means real-time. You decide the actor's play, and instantly it's animated. So the technology has brought us many opportunities: hybrid, digital 2D, CG, real-time animation. I'm sure that tomorrow it will be again stuff that we have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so Metaverse is coming up now. The Metaverse, you're going to have a play in that too, working with game companies, working with, providing solutions to maybe larger, working with technology companies to offer solutions to maybe LVMH in France, or working with some of the big retailers.
Yes, and I think that you have to be ready for that. I've always, and I think this is a lesson which we've taken from Toy Story at the time, when we created the company. We said we've got to be ready for the unpredictable. The other thing is that when you master the technology, any type of technology, then you can adapt it to the content you want to create. The content is king. Content is absolutely king. It's king for the creators. It's king for your clients. That's another discussion. You have clients. They want to target specific populations, specific. They all try to be different. They sort of compete with each other. But in the end, what you need to do is to make sure that you have the right technology to create your content properly, whether it is stop motion, whether it's 2D, whether it's CG, whether it's real-time animation. And you rightly said, working with Unreal or Unity, but we are working with Unreal, has provided us with many new creation opportunities. It changes many things. How fast can you produce? Is it cheaper or more expensive? And if you don't want this to be cheaper, then because in a way it's different, you can maybe create more with the same amount of money, or you can create less with less money. So specifically between 2015 and 2022, to me, the animation world has changed.
Excellent. Absolutely, yes. So what does each of the countries where Cyber Groups has studios or has offices, what do they have to offer? And what will encourage you to set up a studio in India instead of just working with Indian studios? I think you're working with Purple Turtle, or you did work with Purple Turtle Animation.
Yes, we co-produced a series with India, which is Purple Turtle, which I'm very proud of because I think it's a beautiful series. We produced that with Manish Rajora and his company. And I fell in love with Purple Turtle, so that's a personal thing. I have to fall in love. I'm basically a creative person. I'm also a business person, but I'm a chief creative officer of my company. So, and I write a lot of series. So I fell in love with Purple Turtle. But to go back to your question, which is what do we offer? We think that there is talent, animation talent, creative talent, production talent everywhere. We don't look for, we as Cyber Group Studios, we don't look for factories. For a long time, people have looked at Eastern Europe, India, China as factories where you could produce less expensive, and those countries would export to United States, to Europe. Okay, that's fine. France does the same thing with wine and champagne and whatever, so we do that. But to me, the reason why we set up Cyber Group Studios in many different countries, and we're now about to, hopefully will be soon in Latin America as well, is because we think that we can produce multi-local creations. People always say, "Oh, I have a series and it's going to be global. It's going to hit worldwide." Okay, fantastic. There's one chance out of 1,000, but there's many regional, local series that appeal to the kids. The series in China or in India or in France or in Finland, aside from the big hits, you have local specificities. So what has pushed us to create imprints of Cyber Group Studios in many countries was the fact that we were looking for local talent. For instance, in the UK, our company, Productions, is one of the best preschool companies in the world. And you know that the UK has an immense talent in preschool. In France, we produce preschool and kids and cartoon and comedy, and France is very well known for its comedy series. In the US, we have a very strong development team, which brings us huge global opportunities. In Italy, Italy is a very creative country. So it's the association of the production capacities and the creative capacity that drives our decision. So your question about India, which is a huge country, which I would love to visit. I have not been to India yet, and I regret it, to be very frank, because it's a beautiful country with a very long past and very talented people. The one reason we would go to India would be to associate creative talent to production capability, but also to service a local market. Our companies in the US, in the UK, in Italy, in France, and soon in Latin America service their local market on top of co-producing in between them. And in Singapore, by the way, we're in Singapore with a company which has a foot in mainland China and which has had massive hits working with Asian broadcasters and also with Disney Worldwide. So it's the association of servicing the region and bringing production talent and creative talent, which drives our decision.
Absolutely, I get that. So quotas are very important, local quotas, you have local incentives, and despite the huge amount of incentives that French studios get from the French government, the French animation industry is facing challenges. What are these challenges and how are they getting past them? Then
I can talk to you about this, but I just want to make one comment. It's, you see, we produce series. We're a French studio, the group is French, but we produce series that do not have subsidies, that do not have quotas. I mean, it is true that the French animation industry is very, very strong. But if we produce between Italy and the US, there are no subsidies, no quotas. If we produce between the UK and Singapore, maybe there are some subsidies in Singapore, but there are very limited tax credits in the UK. So I'm insisting on the fact that yes, for an industry, there was, I think 30 years ago in France, there was a commitment made by the Minister of Culture at the time when the President Mitterrand was in function to make sure that France would have strong video game industries, movie industry, television industry. So that gave birth to the quota system, the subsidies, the tax credits, but you only get that if you actually produce and you have clients. So I think that, and it is interesting because I've discussed with some friends in Korea, and the Korean system is a little bit similar. To support an industry, you need to have local support, not only from the government, but also from the local players, from the local television stations. I have tried to co-produce with India a couple of series, and it was not about subsidies, actually. It was about like getting a client that would bring enough money to produce. And I was not successful. I think there is not as much interest, even though India is extremely well known for the quality of its animation and its production. I'm not sure that today it is a priority as a cultural industry for the country. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it, because it has been a priority in Italy, it has been a priority in France. In the UK, the BBC is, all over the place, supporting the British animation industry. And I know that China is also doing the same now. So it has, beyond the fact that people are talented, beyond the fact that there are millions or tens of millions of potential viewers, it has to become a cultural priority. Otherwise, it does not happen.
Yeah. So, while we are champions at outsourcing, you know, we're a hub where we are actually doing a lot of productions and production work for international studios. Our own animations, our own IPs haven't traveled. That's the Indian IPs, whereas French IPs have traveled all over. So, you're saying, is it the cultural gap, it not being a cultural priority, which has kept Indian IPs from traveling, or is it a commercial kind of initiative where you have support, you also have partners all over the world, you have pre-sales happening, and you have and that gives you money to actually go out and creating IP, which can then travel the world?
Well, I'm not a specialist, of course, and you haven't understood that of the Indian market. But if you look at Purple Turtle, because of the way it has been done, and with a co-production with us and also with an Irish studio, was written in such a way that it could appeal to the world. In certain instances, you can have productions, whether they're Indian or French, and I'm thinking of a couple of French productions, they don't travel. They are for French people, full stop. And eventually it will get sold. The French kids will love, but it will not go beyond the French-speaking area, which is France, Switzerland, and Belgium, maybe French Canada, and that's it. And I think that so one thing is the question of creativity and making sure that your IP talks.
Yeah, you have to make sure you have to make sure that your IP talks.
Your IP talks to other continents. Today, for instance, people talk a lot in the Occident about diversity, different cultures. You have to adapt. You have to adapt to that. I was discussing one day with, and I will not tell the nationality of the country, a producer from a given country. And I was telling him he had a great series, and there were all the characters were blonde and blue eyes, and it was beautiful. But I said, why don't you have different skin colors, different type of personality? Why don't, if you want to sell your series around the world, why do not, the kids, they cannot identify themselves. And they can identify, the small kids, they can identify to animals. But if you cannot expect to sell that series to kids in certain markets, and why are you doing this? He says, oh, because we're all blonde with blue eyes, we don't need anything else. So if you want to go beyond your country, you have to make sure that you can appeal to the kids, and the kids can identify, the parents can identify, and they are happy to have their kids watch the series or the program. So I think it is a question of writing, but it's perfectly okay if the local industry in a given market only supports local productions because they appeal to the local market. But if you want to go abroad, then you need to make sure that you're going to appeal to the world, and this is the most difficult thing. And when you look at a country like India, which has over 1 billion people and faces big challenges, but as 1,000 years of history with, as you said, outsourcing a lot of creative and production talent, there is no reason why creators could not create series that would appeal to the world. But you have to take the world inside of you to be able to do this.
Okay. And do you see co-productions? You said there are lacunae in terms of co-productions. Do you ever see that taking off? And I'll ask you a last question. Content syndication and distribution. What does like you said, it has to be appealing to large audiences, and it shouldn't be geography specific. So, what are the things you have to bear in mind if you want to distribute, license, and syndicate your animated shows? And for that, will the co-productions ever take off in India? Will you ever set up an office in India, or will you ever have a strategic partnership in India like you have in other countries?
You see, when I worked at Disney, my company, and I was not in charge of that because I was in charge of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. My company set up a co-production entity with a very famous Indian family, and it was very successful for many years. I think a strategic partnership can always be found, but you have to have the willingness of both sides to do it. When you look at how India dominates some of the world movie market with Bollywood, there is no reason that if people are serious to do a strategic partnership, it's not only production, it's not only animators, but it's also with creators. There's no reason it doesn't work. But I have not seen an appetite for that yet. What I've seen as an appetite is more like, okay, we've got fabulous studios, we have thousands of people, hundreds of people, give us your work and we'll do a great job. I think India deserves better than that, to be part of the world creative market and to bring the culture of India outside, like many other countries are doing. I think animation is a soft power. It's very important. I distributed a series a long time ago when we created Cyber Group Studios. It's a series created by an Indian company. It was called Raju the Rickshaw. You know what? Rickshaw only exists in India. Nobody knew, no kid in Europe knew what a rickshaw was until we sold the series. And that is what India can bring in doing co-production, strategic partnerships. But it has to be supported by the local industry. And I have not seen, it's not that I do not think, because I don't know, I'm not enough into the system. I have not seen the Indian channels support the animation industry like the Italian support the Italian animation industry, the French support, maybe they've been forced a little bit by the government 30 years ago, or the British support it. And I'm not talking about the United States, which is very different because the United States are media giants, and you know that it's all liberal and it's the power of competition, so it's very different. But to me, there is a virtuous triangle between the channels or the SVOD services, the government, and the producers and the creators. And if you cannot have that virtuous triangle, then it will not happen.
Fantastic. So, do you see, world is changing now. The streamers are wanting to own the IP. They're commissioning you, some of them want to acquire it fully, otherwise they don't really commission you. So that world, it's going back to the fact that IP doesn't stay with the production studios in many, many cases. So,
okay, so that is you're right. This is a big challenge, but you have to look at it both ways. First of all, public broadcasters are, at least, I can see it in Australia, I can see it all over Europe. Mm-hmm. I can see it in some Asian territories. I'm not even talking about CCTV in China, but I can see it in Thailand, I can see it in Vietnam. The public broadcasters are not going to disappear. And with them, you can own your IP. So I would say, yes, there's a difference between the cable channels approach 10 years ago and the SVOD companies today who say, we want to own. But it's also an opportunity because those companies did not exist before. We have made deals with SVOD companies where we own IP, we still own our IP, and we've made deals where we have given them our IP. But there's a trade-off. But that, to me, it's a challenge. Okay, it would be terrible if suddenly all the producers were forced to sell all their IPs to everybody in the world. But that is not going to exist, because you still have private channels. You look at Super RTL in Germany, for instance. I own my IP. I deal with Super RTL. I own my IPs. Look at public broadcasters. They don't want to own your IPs, and they're not going to disappear. That's government policies in many countries to have public broadcasters, for reasons that we're not supposed to discuss here. But public broadcasting is very strong in countries like Canada, like France, like Italy, like the UK. So now you have the SVOD. They want to own the IP. Some want, some don't want. To me, it's an opportunity. And they come with bigger budgets. So yes, it's a challenge. Yes, sometimes it's disappointing. So say you bring something and say, okay, we're going to do it, but we have to own it. But we want this to be very big, so here is the budget. I think the challenge is that is facing this industry is more into what's going to happen in 3 years. Because today there's a lot of money coming into the animation industry. It creates an inflation on costs. It creates a rarity on manpower. That is something that to us, it's a big challenge. It's good for the animators, it's good for the creator. I can see that the price of scripts, the price of Bible have dramatically increased over the last 5 years. So as a creator myself, I feel happy. As a producer, I'm saying, okay, so who's going to pay for all this? How much is it going to? How much is it going to cost? I've seen budgets increase, regular budget increase by over 30 or 40% in the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not talking about like, oh, here is 20 million to produce a series. I'm talking about, doing a series in Europe for a regular broadcaster. 5 years ago, it would cost 6 million. Today, it costs 8 or 9 million. I'm talking euros or dollars, because it's about the same today with the exchange rate. So the challenge is, there is a big challenge facing us. And what is going to happen when the competition is over? Because some will die. I have no idea who's going to die. But this influx of money into the animation industry, there's billions which are being spent to get subscribers, is not going to last another 10 or 20 years. So we've got to prepare for this. And we can prepare for this in opening our roster to other clients, whether they're public or private, in opening or creating for internet channels, or doing fast channels ourselves, or doing more technology to decrease costs, which we see in real-time animation. These are the challenges that we're facing. It is going so fast. When I look at the decade, 1990, when I was involved in all those movies with Disney, and even, the decade 2000 to 2010, okay, was the appearance of more cable channels and the appearance of CG. But that was nothing compared to the maelstrom, which is happening today.
Wow, that's really wise words, that we have to be prepared. Any last words, because we are running out of time. We have a 20-minute window. Any last words you'd like to say? I really want to see you in India next year when we do the KAM summit. I hope we can interest you enough to come into during that period where we can have a live conversation. But any last words you'd like to say?
Yeah, India is a fascinating country, and I would love not only to be there, but I would love to work more there. We have some agreements with Indian studios today, with limited co-production, and everything is under NDA, so I cannot discuss it. But they will recognize themselves, because they know I'm speaking today, and they sent me an email. You were right when you talk about strategic partnership. I've been looking, I spent the last 3 years to create strategic partnership. To me, not to be in India, like not to be in Latin America, is absurd. It's absurd. It makes no sense. And what I want to do is to be able to work with creators of all over the world, and to appeal to the children from all over the world. I think that's what is key to me. So India, is a very important country for our industry, and I hope that we're going to be able to work more there and build a business together with Cyber Group Studios.
Great. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you at MIPCOM in October, in the next month and a half. A pleasure talking to you, Pierre.
Thank you for the invitation.
And look forward to a longer, association with your studio, and with somebody who loves India like you do. And hopefully, at some stage, you will find the right strategic partner in India, and you will take a lot more interest in India, and in terms of setting up base here at some stage. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and have a great summit.